Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Empathic Leader, where we talk all things empathy, emotional intelligence, and leadership. I am Dr. Melissa, and I'm so happy to have you here with me today. And I'm excited. My book is out, and we have made it to being an Amazon bestseller. And I want to give heartfelt thanks to my audience, because I know that in part this is because of you. Because of the people who helped me to get into this place, because you believe it's as important of a subject as I do. So many, many thanks. And let's keep this conversation going. This is important. So let's keep talking. Today, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the big questions that come up about what you as a leader can do to actually instill empathy in your culture. And this is important. Number one, because it comes up in a lot of the interviews I've been doing. As part of a book promotion tour, I've been doing a lot of interviews, podcasts, some TV, that kind of thing. And these are the questions that people want to know. So that means that the answers aren't out there, and I'm happy to answer them as best I can. The other thing is that I talk about actionable empathy, but if you don't know how to put it into action, that's going to be difficult. So let's take a moment and talk about a few ways that leaders can actually instill empathy into their organizations. And that it's not just a buzzword, it's an action. The biggest thing that you can do is to show it. I have a lot of leaders that don't like to hear this, but you are always on stage. There is always someone who is watching, who is listening, who is emulating what you do, who is taking their cues from the way you act. So you can talk about empathy all day long and how important it is, and it's part of our cultures and it's part of our values. But if you don't actually show it, those words fall really flat. Your people are watching and they can tell the difference. And this comes in a couple different ways. It can be in the way you interact with people. Do you actually notice your people, or do you put your head down and chug down the halls if you come out of your office at all? Do you pay attention to what's going on, or are you always somewhere else? And leadership is hard. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it isn't hard. I'm not saying it isn't overwhelming. I'm not saying you're not incredibly busy. You are. But leadership, or at least good leadership, is not easy. If it were, everyone would be doing it. And I would happily be out of a job. If I were out of a job because all organizations ran optimally and smoothly and took care of all of their stakeholders, their employees, their customers, their board, everybody, I would be happy to be out of a job. You have to show what you want your people to do. And that's not just in your interactions, it's also in how you do business. Do you actually take care of your people, or do you make it difficult for them to get the job done? Is the workplace so toxic that your people can't work optimally, and yet you just leave it that way because it's easier than leaving it alone? I used to know a CEO who made sure everybody in his organization had name tags. And he wanted their first name to be really big because he was the CEO. He couldn't remember everybody's name. But when he walked up to someone, he could glance at their badge and be able to call them by their first name. And the people knew. It's not like this was some secret. But the point was that he made an effort. He was trying to do better for his people. And that was enough. Remember, empathy at its best works in both directions. So if you give empathy and you show empathy, you're going to be a lot more likely as a leader to get it back in return. People are going to be more understanding and more connected with you, which means when the hard time comes, you're going to have their loyalty. The second thing you can do, and this is actually an easy one that's incredibly overlooked, is don't always be in your office. Get out and see your people. True innovation comes from the front lines because they're the ones who see what could be more efficient, what could be done better, how it could be done cheaper. Your true innovation won't make it to you if they don't trust you. And if they don't see you, then of course they don't trust you. What builds your know, like, and trust factor is to be out and be visible. And that doesn't mean you have to go out and spend hours with your people. You can just get out every so often and see them quickly. Find out. Do they think if you come out of your office that something's wrong and someone's going to get fired? Or do they actually look forward to seeing you? I knew one CEO that on Friday mornings for an hour, he would get a box of donuts on his desk, and that was your hour to ask Tim anything. And people did. And that organization ran really well because his people knew that he was there for him. If you don't get out and see your people every so often, they don't know who you are. Are you chained up to a desk behind an administrative assistant? Do you only come out of your office when something is wrong? Is your office up in a corner somewhere where no one can get a hold of you? Are you doing town halls at some time during the day when no one can see you at all? Be mindful of your people, and they'll be mindful of you. Don't talk about empathy as a cultural thing or something in the mission and values if you don't believe it. If you talk a big talk about empathy and you don't actually do it, your people will know and they'll lose trust in you. It makes you look inauthentic, disingenuous. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes when someone thinks they're stupid. So you have to be careful with that. Empathy is a big buzzword right now because it really does raise profit, productivity, and innovation. It's a big deal. I kind of can't believe it's taken us this long to figure it out. So everybody wants to jump on that bandwagon, but they don't actually have it. And this is creating problems. There was an Ernst & Young survey done, 2024, I think, where they talked to the same group of people that they had done with their original empathy survey, the one that showed that places with empathy can raise profit, productivity, and innovation. One of the exact quotes that came out of there is that empathy is the glue and accelerant for the next era of business transformation. And this isn't me. That comes from Chris Payne, who is the Vice Chair of Americas for Ernst & Young. So that's not an opinion. That came out of a survey. It's based on actual hard data. The second survey asked people if their leaders actually showed empathy. And the ones that said that their leaders talked game but didn't do it, lost faith and trust in their employers. And you know what? Profit, productivity, and innovation plummeted. Your people know if you're just talking a line. So if you don't believe it, or you don't want to put it in place, or you don't feel you can put it in place, don't pretend just because it's trendy. It's going to end up hurting you in the end. Be willing to listen and be self-aware enough that you may be the problem. The thing with leadership, like I said, is that you are always on stage, so you don't even realize which bits are dripping down into the culture. There's two ways to look at culture. You can actually try to embed a culture, create a culture, make it the way you want. Or what happens more frequently is a culture just happens naturally based on the shared beliefs, values, and norms of an organization. The culture reflects how people treat each other, how people think about each other, how people communicate or don't. Even if you're trying to craft your culture into being what it is, things that happen naturally are going to creep into it, which is why like 73% of leaders look at their culture and go, it's not what I want, even though like 98% say it's one of the most important things they can have. You have to be aware that so much of this culture comes from the leadership. So if things are going really, really sideways in this way, you can't continually look around and blame everybody else. You're going to have to take the time to reflect on what you're doing right? Self-reflection, you're looking in. What am I doing? Self-awareness, you're looking out. How is what I'm doing affecting other people? You have to be self-aware and really understand what impact your actions have, and that your intent and your impact could be two different things. And you may go through all of this and decide you're not the problem, and that's okay too. The point is that you took the time to stop and think, yeah, I could be the issue. This could be something I'm doing. And again, if you model this, your people will see it. The last thing, and one of the things that gets overlooked the most, is that even though you have empathy, you still have to be willing to do the hard things. I was in a conversation this week with someone, and we were talking about appraisals and giving appraisals that maybe weren't very glowing. And this person didn't want to do it because nobody likes confrontation and it's not nice and you can really mess things up for an employee. And that's all true. But empathy, for what it is, isn't necessarily nice. It's kind, but it's not nice. We talked in one of our other videos. Nice is a social construct. It's a series of behaviors that allows us to work in society easier than we would otherwise. Kind is when you really sincerely want what's best for the other person. And sometimes what's best for the other person is hard. You may have to give them some bad news. You may have to tell them something they don't want to hear. You may have to coax them along if they're difficult or they don't quite get it. But the point is that you're doing what you need to do for that employee. You want them to grow. You want them to learn. You want them to do better. That doesn't mean they always will. They're a complete human being just like you are. But empathy says that you are willing to have these difficult conversations to try and help them become a better version of themselves. Empathy is not always nice. Empathy is always kind. And if you're not sure, go ahead and take a look at our video talking about differences. We spend a little time sussing out why nice and kind aren't the same thing. Leadership is hard. If it were easy, everyone would be doing it. I don't know how many of my people here remember the original Conan movie from like 1980 or 81 with Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. And you get to the very last scene of the movie and Conan is sitting there with his chin on his hand and just looking sad, looking upset. And it's because all of a sudden he's king. He's taken on all of the responsibility. He doesn't get to just go out and be a barbarian anymore. He has people to lead. And the line that goes in the movie right there says, "Heavy is the head that wears the crown." Now, as a leader, you may not be wearing a crown on the outside, but you do carry that responsibility and everything that goes with it. And that means that if you want empathy in your organization, it's up to you to model it and show people how to use it. Because if you don't, how else are they going to learn? And the best way to learn? Start with self-empathy. But that is another video. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am Dr. Melissa. This was the Empathic Leader. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment. And I look forward to seeing you next time.